Okay, you're watching Reality Check. This is on the first day of India's mega vaccination drive as vaccination is thrown open to the general public, and also the private sector has been roped in to try and push India's vaccine compliance. Joining me on the show, very happy to have with us Uday Kotak. He's of course the president of CII and also MD and CEO of Kotak Bank. Mr. Kotak, good to have you as always. Mr. Kotak, now tell me, because this is something that a lot of you, chambers of industry and others have been saying and asking the government to rope the private sector in to vaccination. Now it appears at least that has been done. The vaccination has been made open. The private sector has gotten involved. Your thoughts on this? Is this along the lines of what you've been asking for?
Okay, Srinivasan, first of all, I must say today, March 1 is a big day, and we've seen a significant change in India's vaccination drive. So we've moved with what started with health workers now to actually open it up for all people above 60 and for people above 45 with comorbidities.
Right.
And I think it is truly fascinating that the process is underway. And I want to share my own first-hand experience, and I think there is a great enthusiasm. I went across from BKC to a location and a center at Mandatola complex.
Okay.
And I could see that lots of people above the age of 60 actually having gathered there. There is a system whereby you can get yourself registered there. Thereafter, they give you a token, and thereafter you have to wait in a queue with the token, get vaccinated, walk in. And this is happening live for people above 60. And I was happy to see. I also tested it out. You could get your registration done. I got a token as well. But since the queue was long, I decided not to go ahead today. But it is working. And you can see the enthusiasm of people above 60. And the most important point, which struck, is the vaccine hesitancy, which was there a month ago, does not seem to be there. People are very open to be taking the vaccine and getting it as soon as possible. This is a very positive sign compared to phase 1, where we saw a certain amount of vaccine hesitancy and nearly 40 or 50% of the people did not go ahead and take that turn.
Correct.
And this is people above 60. So I think there is a right momentum. And other than these locations which were already there in the pre-opening up of March 1, the other hospitals, my feedback is, especially in Bombay, and you will have a better idea for rest of India, is other hospitals are beginning to gear up over the next few days. And we should see a proper, significant vaccination drive spread across at least the city of Mumbai, and I'm sure that is true for the rest of India, in a more systematic manner. And of course, the first day you will always see confusion. That's part of it. You know, you're trying to vaccinate a billion people population. And it's a very mammoth task. So I think we have moved with a certain enthusiasm, which I saw on the ground.
No, that's good to hear that, you know, you've also been out and about. You're, of course, a young man. So, you know, you...
Srinivasan, therefore, I'm due for a vaccine. Okay.
Well, young at heart, as they say, Uday Kotak. But no, it's true that there does seem to be a great response. And also, there are some reports coming in of a few glitches here and there, but that inevitably tends to happen when you start off something new. And I'm sure that will get ironed out. But overall, you think that the idea of roping in the private sector was important, because you can't just do something at this scale, just the government alone. You need to bring in the private sector as well.
You know, you need scale, and this is an execution at scale. There is also need for proper safety, the needle, the vaccine, the storage temperature, the quality of the background and the environment in which you are giving it, because you don't want any other infection. Therefore, there are lots of things to be tested. And I think, therefore, opening up as wide as possible from a time which I think the next few days and weeks may see a sort of distribution scarcity to start with. But as things settle down, I think we will get into a more orderly phase. In many ways, thank God we have started, because whenever we would have done it, even if we had done it 1 month ago, in the initial stages, there would have been challenges like any other program of this scale and size.
No, that's true. Like you said, even with distribution, you know, that will be a challenge as well, to make sure that everybody has enough vaccines at the outset. So I think that's That's going to be something which, but again, as you mentioned, hopefully that will get sorted out pretty soon. Now, at the moment, they are still limiting it to, as you mentioned, those with, above the age of 45 with comorbidities, and then, of course, the 60 plus. You think that that is the right way to go, to do it step by step, rather than just open it up to everybody?
Srinivasan, there is a huge traffic of this category itself. Okay?
Yeah.
So you don't want chaos.
Yes.
You want a crowd, but not a chaos.
Yes.
And that is why I went firsthand to see what is happening. And since I'm 60 plus and eligible, I wanted to see what is really happening on the ground. And I can say that I feel enthused that over the next few days, as we settle, this is going to create a massive, massive distribution opportunity and a challenge. The vaccines need to come in. I think most hospitals and centers may underestimate the demand which is going to come in.
No, you're right, because in Delhi, for example, you had a lot of people turning up, and the hospitals also didn't have the green light to go ahead. They thought it'll start at 9 a.m. It actually started at 12. So you had a bit of a backlog. Also, people were still facing issues with registration and finding their way of how to do that. So all of that, again, should get sorted out. But I want to ask you about another challenge that might come up at some point. And I don't know if you had a chance to see some tweets and comments by Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw of Biocon. She was talking about the fact that the government has capped the price at 250 rupees. She says of that, 100 rupees goes to the hospital and the vaccine maker only gets 150 rupees. She's saying this is not viable. This is actually going to hurt vaccine makers. Your thoughts?
Srinivasan, I come from a sector, the banking sector. We have significant social obligations, including obligations for priority sector lending. We understand that as we grow our institutions, there is an inevitable need to be supporting important areas of society.
Right.
So for priority sector lending, financial inclusion, these are something which, at least in banking, we have to do for a living. And take it with the right spirit, because that's what is needed for ensuring that we get the balance between commercial profits, but also being able to do what is right for a broader development of society.
Right.
Now, my view is that, yes, the commercials may not be great, and Kiran may have a point, but at the same time, I think we should think about this as a broader social cause, and we can discuss whether it should have been 250, 300, whatever that is. I don't think that's a big deal.
Right.
But if we take it in the spirit that each of us at institutions and college, at medical hospitals and others, if we're doing it as a broader service to society,
yes,
maybe 100 rupees less profit per transaction.
Right. No, I mean, it's a valid point that at a time like this, it's a kind of, national emergency situation, this pandemic. And if you need to take a hit, you take a hit. I think what the vaccine makers seem to be saying is that maybe we can take a hit for some time, but if this is going to be the norm throughout, then there could be a problem with a price cap, with a government price cap.
My sense is what we need to ensure is distribution happens. That should be the objective number one, whether it's private sector or government. Therefore, distribution and different points at which vaccines get available is more crucial than anything else. Now, whether that incentive point is 250, 300, 350, I'm sure government and hospitals can figure out. But the most important for me is getting the vaccine out in the arms of Indians across the length and the breadth of the country.
Right. So you're saying that, for a situation like this, to have a government price cap is fine because of the circumstances. Because this is not a normal. This is not a normal time. This is not a normal time.
Kiran's point should be such that distribution happens.
Right. Distribution is key, and you're right, because as we mentioned at the start, because of the fact that we were not getting into the full 100% coverage, it was 40, 50%. There was a lot of vaccine lying in stock meant for the frontline, for the first phase, frontline workers and health workers, that was not getting used. So at least this allows that stock to get used up. So that's good.
Absolutely.
That's
Because
good.
Srinivasan, the worst thing we can as a country do is have a lot of vaccine doses available, but they expire by April, May. That would have been a very big disaster for the country.
That would be awful. The other thing I wanted to ask you is that, because I think this is something that came up in your letter, or CII's letter to the Prime Minister, was that you would also like to get this whole vaccine coverage business for, for workplaces, for, for private sector, for corporations, companies can get their workers vaccinated, and that will be a kind of protective cover. How would you like that to happen? How soon would you like that to happen? How do you think that should be rolled out?
Srinivasan, there is a certain protocol. Therefore, we started with health workers and the frontline workers. We are now saying 60 plus as the core priority, and of course people with comorbidity, even lower age, but at 60 plus, in most corporations, the number of 60 pluses will be very few.
Right. So
when we move to a stage where we start saying that now it's opened up for 40 plus or 50 plus.
Right.
That is the next stage of evolution.
Yes.
And that's the time when we can be more bold in terms of how we spread it.
Right. Now, yes, I think so. I think it's, as you said, today is a big day. It's very important because, Mr. Kotak, as you know, that in absolute numbers, in absolute terms, India may have vaccinated close to, I think, 1 crore people, or it may be 1 crore doses that we've administered. So that's a huge number. But when it comes to as a percentage of population, or per thousand or per million population, we are amongst the lowest in the world. So I think the scaling up that we are going to see today is really important to make sure that a substantive percentage of our population is covered, as other countries have done, Israel and so on. And that's going to be crucial. But also crucially, Mr. Kotak, for the economy, yes, because this is really what is going to hopefully put the economy back on track.
Therefore, Srinivasan, first of all, please do not judge the success of this program on March 1. Wait for 8 days. Wait for 10 days.
Yes.
Let things settle down so that there is a proper process which falls into place.
No,
there are
of course.
significant
I was talking until now. I wasn't talking of March 1. I was saying from when we started till now, our coverage in absolute numbers has been sizable, but as percentage of population is still small. That's what I meant.
Yeah, your point is absolutely fair. But I think now is the time to really pick up momentum, and I would give 7 to 8 days breathing time for state governments to get the local, state level, city level, village level machinery in place.
Yes.
And we should really start evaluating this success from the 10th of March.
Yeah. Now, tell me about the economy. We spoke on the day of the budget as well. And I think then as well as earlier, you were hopeful that there are indications of an uptick, of things starting to turn around. Now with this vaccination drive picking up pace, how optimistic are you that we will start to see things turning around?
So first of all, I think the optimism continues. At the same time, we must be realistic. First of all, realism on the vaccine is I do hope that it works on various mutations. Number two, if there are some strains which they don't work on, we will have to figure out newer versions of the vaccines and adaptations of the vaccines for the newer mutations. Therefore, there's still a lot of work on the vaccine side itself. There is certainly hope and optimism, but we have to be clear. We have to watch this space closely, and I would not want any of us to declare victory prematurely.
Fair enough.
So let's do the hard work and let's focus on vaccinating, watching the strains, watching the changes in mutations, and of course, watching the COVID numbers on a daily basis.
No, absolutely. That's a fair point. Let me specifically ask you about the economy, though, quite apart from the whole vaccination question. Now, what are you, when you look at the economy, what are the elements or what are the aspects of the economy that you think are showing an improvement, which is giving you some indication that things are turning around? I'll ask you what worries you after that, but first to get a sense from you of what is looking good to you, what's picking up.
I think really, if I look at the economy, it's really two parts. First is businesses in the organized sector which have access to capital markets. Those businesses, even if they're in tougher sectors or stress sectors, they are getting capital from the capital markets. Right. So there is a great advantage which companies in the organized sector have, even if they are in the stressed sectors, because they have access to the capital. What I call is as the haves. Access to capital is the ones who are the haves. And therefore, the importance of capital markets as the key area for raising resources for the country and through the organized sector, therefore good governance, ability to scale, all those become important.
Right.
On the have side, again, I think there are two categories. One is where the government of India has stepped in and given an ECLGS program, that is a guarantee against which banks have lent money.
Yes.
What we have to be careful about is otherwise the smaller businesses, and I think both in urban and semi-urban areas, unsecured retail consumer financing is an area which is continuing to show some challenges, because all these categories really fall more into their inability to have access to secure jobs,
right,
or companies who are able to secure capital.
Right. So so that's the distinction. But let me ask you this. I know it's still early days out of the budget, but a lot of you at the time of the budget had said this is a growth-oriented budget and this is likely to kind of revive growth, stimulate investment. Again, with all the caveats that it's still very, very early days out of the budget. Are you seeing any indication of that?
I think there are a lot of positive signs and the winds of change are there. If you look at the car industry, you look at the tractor industry, you look at the construction equipment industry, and you look at various other sectors of the economy, they're showing pretty good signs of recovery. Therefore, I am hopeful about a recovery into next year. And therefore, if India, can it off a lower base grow at a 10% level GDP? My answer is yes. The thing which we need to work on today is not the growth for FY 21-22 alone, but how do we create sustainable growth in 22-23 and beyond? And that is something we need to focus on now.
Right.
And it is here that if we restructure the focus onto investment side, it should be the driver. And that's what the budget has done. It has changed the mindset from number one, it has made a very clear signal that it is pro-enterprise.
Right.
Two, it is very clear that it is pro-investments. And the belief is that if these two work, consumption will undoubtedly follow. And we may run higher fiscal deficits, which in turn will lead ultimately to higher growth, and which will enable us to moderate fiscal deficits. The one question which we need to watch out carefully is interest rates and global fuel prices.
Right.
Both these are things we need to watch out. The US 10-year bond has gone up from 0.9 to 1.4% in a matter of less than 1 month.
Yes.
Which has put some pressure on bond yields globally, including India. And most important for a sustainable investment recovery in India is a stable tax regime which the government has ensured. And a stable, reasonable range interest rate regime.
You're right. About the US bonds, I think the markets didn't take that very well. But I wanted to ask you, though, about the stressed aspects of the economy, including what you call the sort of the haves, those who have access to capital. If you look at the areas which really took a hit, like services, restaurants, tourism, travel, airlines, a lot of them say that it's one thing for us to be able to access capital. We can access loans and so on, but we still have to service those loans. What many other countries did was to actually provide bailouts to those sectors. And some of those sectors have been hit so hard that they may not be just necessarily able to sustain themselves just through more borrowing. Do you believe that that's one area which did need government attention, that there could be, or is there still time to bail some of those sectors out?
Srinivasan, first let me give you an example of power of capital markets. A movie theater company was able to raise money twice from the capital markets as equity capital. We know how people go to cinema shows in the last 1 year. Despite that, capital markets have been liberal and have supported companies even in the theater industry to be able to raise capital. I think similarly, the right kind of airlines can also raise capital in the capital markets. So also hotels, I think they will get funding, including from private equity and real estate funds. So they will all get funding provided they have the right construct. However, there are segments of the tourism and hospitality sector which may face challenges if they do not have access to capital. And this is where I much rather focus on access to capital, including ECLGS and restructuring, rather than think about this stress going away immediately.
Okay.
But 1 year from now, if COVID vaccines work, I think you will be in a different, we will be singing a different.
Let me ask you finally about Kotak itself. Mr. Kotak, what are your, again, in the spirit of what you mentioned, that there's a kind of opening up of animal spirits now, are you, as a result of that, planning any expansion? How is that playing out for you?
No, at Kotak, our view is that this is one of the great opportunities to be building a financial services business in India. India is at a critical turning point of a growth stage, and therefore we can actually be in a position to do well and do good at the same time. What is right for the economy and what is right for Kotak is
So
well aligned at this point.
Specifically, what does that mean? Are you thinking
What
of
it
expansion?
means is
Yes.
we are happy lending money. We are happy to be growing our balance sheet for segments where we believe that we will get our money back, because our first responsibility is to depositors and their money. Therefore, we will lend with a sense of responsibility. But there is demand, there is growth coming in the economy, and we will certainly look at avenues and opportunities to grow in a manner where depositors' trust and interests are protected.
Okay. All right. Uday Kotak, fingers crossed. Let's hope it all goes well. But as you mentioned, it's a big day today, and it's great to have you on the show. Uday Kotak, thanks very much.
Thank you, Srinivasan, and all the best. Bye.